Handy Andy was a small grocery chain in Texas that opened in 1927 and closed in 2012. Thank you for your suggestion.
Handy Andy, better than ever.
Compare Handy Andy to any other supermarket.
Our Gold Seal beef is the freshest in town. Cut right here in the store.
They're brighter, cleaner. We're a hometown supermarket, and we know what our customers want.
If there's something you can't find, I'll help you find it, personally.
And definitely friendlier.
Better than ever. Handy Andy.
In 1927, Alvin Lee Becker and his family opened its first Handy Andy store at 1716 Broadway in San Antonio, Texas. The store and the subsequent grocery store chain would become one of the dominant players in the early San Antonio grocery market. Handy Andy were innovators in the San Antonio grocery market, adding features like drugstores, bakeries, and housewares, long before competitors like H-E-B or the Piggly Wiggly. The company was considered to be a very well-run affair. Employees were promoted based solely on job performance, not seniority, which led to a very dynamic and forward-thinking team. Charles Lee Baker would take over the operations in the 1960s after his father's death in 1963. Mr. Becker brought Handy Andy from a family-owned grocery store into a food giant. He catapulted a family business into a significant commercial venture by concentrating on customer service and innovations that were a forerunner in the grocery industry. He accomplished this by traveling the world in search of the best, whether it was for cheese, wine, or fancy French foods. He introduced the concept of the gourmet deli and fine wines, which became the forerunner for grocery stores throughout the industry. By the 1960s, Handy Andy had grown into a similar operating area as the competitor H-E-B, serving San Antonio, the Hill Country, and the Rio Grande Valley regions. Despite the similarity in the territory served, these were two distinct operations. With Handy Andy's store count being dwarfed by the much larger H-E-B stores, what may have been a bit of a sly dig in the 1960s, H-E-B's hometown of Kerrville even managed to find themselves with a Handy Andy. The stores were known as being relatively dependable on prices and a bit nicer than the competition. They were far from being luxury grocers, but you could tell the Becker family put pride into their stores. By the 1970s, the company had peaked with nearly 60 stores across Texas and sales that exceeded $200 million. The chain opened its first store in the Houston area in 1971. By that time, Handy Andy had essentially hit its expansion limit to the west of San Antonio. With uncertainty as to where to go next, the company leadership would bring in a consulting firm to help them determine their next move. During the buildup of their grocery operations, Handy Andy had also kept the side business of continuing to run convenience stores, generally ones that sold liquor next to supermarkets, as well as commissaries and cafeterias and offices and public buildings. By 1973, Handy Andy was up to 3 stores in Houston and had just broken 40 locations chain-wide. While Handy Andy was not unfamiliar with the price war stunts put on by H-E-B, this time it was a bit different. In the mid-1970s, many local grocers were growing their presence in San Antonio, and a national chain, Lucky, was attempting Eagle discount centers and Magna Mart locations in San Antonio. H-E-B planned to bring everything they had to the table to win this price and make a name for themselves as the dominant grocer of San Antonio. While many expected the price wars to go on for a few months, they actually lasted for years. At the same time, an almost identical situation was playing out in Houston, but on a much larger scale. Comparing the two districts, San Antonio stores had a much higher profit compared to Houston stores. While the Houston stores were doing very good business, the huge and intricate stores cost lots of money to operate. To appease shareholders, the Becker family was taken out of the control of the company after nearly 50 years. Changes began to happen at the company. New stores built would be much smaller, closer to 30,000 square feet. Existing locations would be reconfigured to focus on soft lines and more traditional supermarket fare, likely along the lines of Safeway superstores. Exotic groceries would be reduced, being replaced by cheaper alternatives. The grocery chain decided to close stores, especially in the Houston area. As soon as Handy Andy announced they were exiting Houston, Lucky left San Antonio and the price wars mostly ended. Handy Andy put their focus on the proposed expansion into Corpus Christi area, opening multiple new stores there. However, with the 1981 entry of Kroger into the San Antonio market and outstanding debts from the Houston stores, including the continual rent payments on empty locations, Handy Andy filed for bankruptcy. While the company was able to somewhat reorient themselves in bankruptcy, most of what was done was to separate the convenience store and cafeteria from the grocery store business. Company executives once boasted a local market share topping 30%, but industry price wars, shrinking profit margins, and multiple changes in management cut Handy Andy's numbers after it declared bankruptcy in 1981. By 1992, Handy Andy had about 20 stores, with sales down from its peak to $148 million. It sold its properties 1 year later to Arizona-based Mega Food Stores. That company also had purchased all of the Kroger stores, as it had exited the San Antonio market. After several more changes in leadership, Handy Andy's store count fell to 14 in 2005 and 6 in 2010. Management felt that Handy Andy's small numbers might help it avoid attention from larger competitors. In November of 2012, the 6 remaining Handy Andy stores were purchased by the family-owned Arlen's Market. The 6 locations, 3 Handy Andy stores in San Antonio, and 1 each in New Brunsville, Schertz, and Seguin. The newly acquired stores changed their names to Arlen's Market, and the company started replacing the signage at its new locations. This officially brought Handy Andy's 86-year history to an end. So what do you remember about this place? Leave a comment or a suggestion for a future video below. And if you haven't already, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.